What is going on, guys? Today we are looking at another midfielder tier list, but today we have pretty much most of the team of the season. The only one that is left now is obviously Serie A. That will come in the coming weeks, but also then we might have some other promos at that point as well. Serie A and Ultimate are the only two left, and then we move on to, I can imagine, Shapeshifters and Footers to see off the final of FIFA. So we probably only have one or two tier lists left on the midfielders, and we'll make a full list of obviously the best of the best. In terms of every team of the season, they seem to have had one standout centre mid that either A, costs an absolute shed load or are just miles above the rest. Bellingham comes to mind as the first one that I can see. 97 rated, better than obviously his team of the year, and he is an absolute cracking card to get. Everything above 90, he is 100% in that top spot. We then have one next to him that I think in general, I've always liked Kev in terms of FIFA sort of play style, but it was always the end card for me that really shone compared to the gold, maybe one or two informs. The team of the season is just so much better, which is hopefully what you'd kind of expect with any card. I'd like to tell you about skycoach.gg. They offer many features within the FIFA franchise, from FIFA coins to FIFA Weekend League boosts, from trusted sellers, pro players, and are the best prices on the market currently. They have fast delivery, high quality services, lots of games, and also a cashback program. The more coins you buy, the more eligible you are for cashback options. So if you want to buy FIFA coins at the best price, click the link in the description of this video. It will be active promo code for 10% discount from my subscribers. All you have to use is the code JT11 at the checkout to receive this bonus. Onto the video. But it's card like Kev and also like Salah, I don't normally get along with their gold, their first inform, maybe an out of performance base card if they are struggling, but definitely the team of the season, Footage, Shapeshifter is normally the top spot. Kev obviously as well, having that team of the year always works very, very well. If then we kind of start from this list, then we'll see some of the lesser sort of centre mids now. I think in terms of Grealish, Footballers was an interesting promo to say the least, and I do think Grealish is most definitely coming down now to a position where I feel like he was definitely at the topper end in terms of Prem, but now we're getting the likes of Havertz, we're getting the likes of obviously a KDB, or Bernardo Silva. He's never really going to compete with them unless he gets another massive upgrade himself. If then we see a few others, obviously Conte comes to mind as well. I think, again, another great card that unfortunately looks like he is starting to come to the end of a FIFA run. I feel like it's been 5 to 6, 7 years where Conte has been the best gold centre defensive mid you could get, the best Prem centre defensive mid, France, everything about him was always incredible. I like the card, and I think, yes, it might be a little bit expensive, but this is probably it now. Maybe a Footies later on, because obviously we haven't had any sort of moments or team of the season due to injury. Whether we see anything more, maybe a flashback of end of era is going to be the final ones for him. If then we take a look at a few of the icons, unfortunately, I do think icons now, unless they are a Matthias, a Hullet, a Vieira, they're just unfortunately going into more fodder of anything. I think Essien probably puts himself as one of the better defensive mids, as I feel like they are lacking in terms of an actual defensive mid. But again, you can almost alter that with a Vieira, a Hullet, a Matthias. You don't need a solid DM when all of them can play both ends. That unfortunately is what it is. I think Gattuso nowadays, to be fair, that's probably a bit harsh. I'll go B, just because I do think the card definitely at the start of the game is very good, but naturally, he's going to run out of positions. Kaka, I know we had I think it was an SBC for his prime, in fact. I don't think it was his full birthday, but still a very topper tier cam, just unfortunately not going to go into that S tier. I think Keane is a surprising one from Trophy Titans. For me, I think he definitely has everything that a defensive / kind of box to box, more of the passing sort rather than necessarily somebody who is going to get you goals. We then also have the age-old debate between Lampard and Gerrard. Two very good box-to-boxes, very similar stats as you can imagine. I do think both of them pretty much are the same sort of cards, really. There is very little difference between the two. With obviously the stats, we both got 94, which is always what it was going to be. Lampard is obviously a 4-star, 4-star, and Gerrard is a 3-star, 5-star. So Again, they even have the weaknesses and strengths that kind of combat each other as well. Obviously, the 5-star weak foot in a midfield, always going to be impeccable. But then having that little bit of an edge with the 4-star skill moves as well, it's going to balance each other out. So I think an A suits them both to the ground. We then have Makalele, just because I can see him as a... Oh, we got Matthias. He's an easy S. If you've not seen any of the icon tier lists I've done, go check them out after this, because we cover most of... Well, I think we cover pretty much all of the icons in one tier list that just has everything that you need to know in a greater detail. Matthias is always going to be an S. Makalele, very much like Essien, a very, very solid CDM. Good defensive ability, good physicality, has a little bit more of the dribbling side of stuff and passing alongside obviously the upgrade from normal prime to team of the year and obviously trophy titans. We then have Marquisio. For Marquisio, I think he is still absolutely exceptional. I do think now we're starting to get the 90 pluses everywhere. He's going to lose a bit of factor to him. I feel like the only card now in terms of Trophy Titans that is going to really push the boat out is going to be Arman Yaya. He is just in-game perfect. He's very much like Vieira, very much like Hullet, a tall old unit with not necessarily the greatest stats in the world. There's only one stat technically above 90 on the base card, or in fact 2, and that's passing and physicality. The fact that his defending is only 83 should be overtaken by now. But that's where height, physicality does really come into a play, and just natural in-game ability of their body type, their work rates. And Yaya is always going to be elite when it comes to that. Whether we see a shapeshifter, I'm hoping they don't put him at centre-back, but at least the option to go CDM could be a good shout for them. We then have Barella in the centre mid, obviously into the UCL final, where he could receive the final upgrade if they are to take on and beat Manchester City. Whether he does it is a big question that I think is going to be one that really could make or break this card. I do think in terms of box to box, looking absolutely sensational. And again, this is before Serie A has come out. So whether we see another upgrade from him, or obviously somebody that could combat him in terms of an Italian midfielder, that would be the interesting point to see. But at the minute, one of the better ones that we have got. And I think another one that's coming in really close to him in terms of price and obviously what he can do in the game, Benazir has been incredible. Obviously not necessarily the biggest upgrade from his fantasy foot, but most definitely a lovely card from way back into the community. We then have Kimmich, another cracking card. I feel like most of the S's now are going to be the top of the top. We're looking at, for instance, a KDB, a Bellingham, maybe even a Musiala when he comes up here. But in terms of what we can find for the price, and obviously go against necessarily spending millions, I'd say a Kimmich, a couple of 100,000, a Benazir, maybe 100,000 right now, even to the point where we have Caicedo. He looks outstanding. I don't see him too much, but he looks absolutely brilliant. Great pace for a CDM, defending, physical, passing, dribbling, all in a line to make yourself a very useful free card. But unfortunately, it did come at the point of obviously the Prem with an 83 times 15. Unfortunately, I feel like a lot of people did choose that option, so we won't see too many of him, unfortunately. We then go over to a couple of the players that we've got already. I feel like Abidi Pele could definitely do with the upgrade, but still obviously hanging on with his fantasy foot upgraded. We then have someone like a Benzema. His team of the season's always going to take credit for this, but winter wildcard, I must admit, this is one of the centre mids. I looked at it when obviously, because it's kind of like a shapeshifter with how winter wildcard was displayed this year, I just didn't see him being as good as what he is. He genuinely can play a very good role with that. They've moved the stats around. They've made him obviously less attacking compared to what his normal team of the season, team of the year card is. And it just suddenly works. And I must admit, there's one card that I really do want to see in footies, and that's going to be Enzo Fernandez. I do think we've got a lot of good Prem midfielders, but in terms of Enzo, I don't know about him. There's just something that looks, if he was to get a 95, a 96, he most definitely could have an absolutely ridiculous card in FIFA. I don't know if he's a 5-star or anything, but most definitely a young prospect that is definitely one to have a look at. He's a 3-star, 4-star. I feel like they could have upped that for maybe a Could they go, maybe they go 4-star, 5-star? I think 5-4 for skill move in favour there. I don't know if that's going to really play into the hands of a centre mid. I think I would have loved to have seen a 4-5 from him. Maybe a 95, 96 rated coming in the future. That potentially could be a nice card coming in. Another future star in Cherokee definitely was an S tier once future stars came out. And I do think as he kind of progresses, still a very good cam if you've not necessarily got a huge amount of League 1 players. Because even now we've got the likes of Cabela. In terms of a center attacking mid, he's unreal. The price is absolutely crazy, and this is the difference now and why I'm trying to phase some of the 89 and 90 rated cards that came prior, because the stats of a team of the year, or team of the season in fact, should be better. It should be. There should be no arguments with it. Obviously we have the minor leagues, obviously Brownhill. For me, I feel like he is very much like a Grealish. He's a nice card, but unfortunately there is so many better options. And that's where we're kind of going with this. I judge my tier list, for instance, if I would go Bellingham, is there anybody else that I would actually prefer over him? With De Bruyne, again, in centre mid, cam, is there anybody else? And in terms of the S category, I try and keep it as elite as possible. I feel like there's a lot of A pluses, but the S is what everybody wants. And there's only so many. There's not going to be hundreds of options in these S categories because otherwise there'd just be too many options. And EA know what the meta is and what it actually stands for. Andre, unfortunately, my friend, is going to be more of a fodder if anything. We'll try and move this out one more because I feel like we're going to get everywhere. We can obviously see the rest. We're going to just put in a few of these icons here because obviously Zidane, Vieira, they were always going to be in that S category. There's no two ways about it. Roy Costa, personally, I feel like, again, going to be more fodder if anything. Xavi's probably on that Gattuso level. I do think he's got some playability, but it's going to be more a Barcelona past and present. It's going to be more of that forcing Xavi in rather than necessarily taking a Pedri role, even a Joel Linton role. They are going to be better in their formation 100% of the time. I do think Xabi Alonso has some play still. Unfortunately, has dropped out of my team over the past few weeks. Obviously, team of the seasons, unfortunately, will take precedent over that. And I do think Pirlo's probably about right there as well. Varane, unfortunately, is going to be in that fodder category as well. So let's try and handpick some of these S categories from obviously the team of the season. Obviously, Musiala, we got a great double duo there with Bellingham and Musiala, a box-to-box, more of a very attacking cam as well. I do think both of them do play well together, in fact. If you've got like a 4-4-2, you're trying to play a very balanced formation. Bellingham is a bit of both. Obviously, if you wanted to go more heavy on the defence with him, Anchor, Shadow will still do an absolute job for him, whereas Musiala has some defensive ability. I personally play Zidane in that sort of centre mid cam role, and it works well. I think Musiala, just rating alone, will carry him through there. Renato Sanchez, I don't think I need too much explaining for this guy. His 85 was still 300k in April. That just shows you personally, either it's a massive supply issue or obviously there is still a very big demand on a card that has not been upgraded for absolutely months. Whereas this card is an absolute joke. He is crazy good. If then we look at Valverde, I'd put him on that same sort of pedestal. Obviously, the pace is a massive one for him. They did have a couple of right mids for him as well. I don't know if it was in his inform or player of the month that was right mid, but that just doesn't work for him. He's a centre mid and he absolutely rocks it. I even put Pedri on that category, to be honest. With Pedri, he was very surprising because normally what we find when somebody gets a FUT birthday, we tend to see the downgrade of whatever they've got. For instance, FUT birthday is normally around a 5-star skill, a 5-star weak foot, or if you are fortunate, a 5-5. In this team of the season, we've seen so many cards retain that 5-5. It's almost great and bad at the same time because that is what made longevity of cards. If you remember last year or the year before, we had a Rashford, we had an Mbappe, a 5-5, team of the year, 4-5, 5-4. It just adds that different element that FUT birthday may be two ratings lower, but what do you consider better, a 5-5 or a 5-4? For me, it would always be the 5-5, and Pedri is incredible with it. If we then have a little scan over, I do like Modric. He has caught my eye. Whether I put him in the S is a big... It's a debate, to be honest. Because I'm thinking, we've got his 96 as a team of the year. I must admit, 97 rated Modric coming in at 485,000 is absolutely crackers in itself. It depends, in fact. Let's have a quick comparison between him and obviously KDB. If we could put him both there, let's have a little zoom in. So we've got the 84, 87, 92, 87. Obviously the passing and dribbling, both very elite. Has a little bit more defending and a little bit less physicality. Obviously with Kev, he predominantly is more of a cam, if anything, which is kind of why I give him a little bit of a pass going forward. In fact, I've just tried to compare his team of the year when we're trying to team of the season. In terms of what we've got for skill moves, we've both got a 4-star, 5-star. In terms of height, what are we looking at both? 5'8 for Modric, 5'11 obviously for KDB. Medium high work rates on the defensive to attacking for Modric. In fact, we'll keep him there. I feel like in terms of what I'm trying to argue KDB with, I do think Modric is the same. And I must admit, if I'm putting anybody there, Bernardo Silva as a cam is delightful. The agility is very quick. He's got a great shot on him, obviously with a chem style, and he just naturally is a very good card from that community. And I think in terms of midfielders, that looks about right for my S's, because I'm thinking if I was looking at Kimmich, would I go for over Renato Sanchez or Valverde, obviously closer to the positions? I'd probably go with the top two. Marquisio, again, probably about the same. I think icons are pretty much there as well. I would say it depends on your formation. This is going off personally my experience. So if you do have any other arguments, does Casado go up there? Have you used him for X amount of matches? Let me know down below in the comments. Obviously, it is all based around opinion. In fact, scratch it. I've saw Goretzka. Goretzka is absolutely wonderful. If you've seen him, you've used him, you know exactly what we're talking about. A beautiful, beautiful centre mid. Then we go on to the slightly lower sort of ratings of cards. I think in terms of a starting point, let's have a look. We've got Vermin. Personally is now fodder more than anything. I feel like if we go across a little bit, because some of these do have kind of a brief explanation of obviously where they're kind of sitting. We will get rid of, let's get rid of some of these older cards and kind of go with where I think they should be now. I think Tolisso is probably about there. To be honest, I feel like that's probably harsh on Muller. This is why I don't like having too many categories, because I feel like they're so up and down. With this whole B and C list, I wouldn't care for any of them, to be honest. I really would. They'd all be going into SBCs at some point. So it is kind of just on the day where I'm thinking, Gavi, he needed an upgrade, really. We'll keep him in that A, because, I don't feel like I'd prefer him over an Enzo or obviously a Cherokee and a Cam Roll, if you can even link them together. De Jong, still a good card. Again, could do with an upgrade now from Path to Glory, which is many, many moons ago. We have Ozil. Again, I never really got on with him. I feel like he's probably... In fact, we'll go A for him, because he's definitely a nice cam. But I think in terms of how much he's got to fit your team, you've either got to have German players. Obviously, it comes in really nice now that we do have the Turkish team of the season. But unfortunately, it's a little bit late for the SBC, personally. If then we look across the board, we have Okocha. Still got to be in that A+, surely. Even Park, I would say maybe he's only dropped down one. I do think the card... In fact, how much is he still coming in at? Because I remember I got him a few weeks ago, I want to say, with one of the first ones. Still 360, which is actually a really good price to say how many World Cup heroes, fantasy foots we've actually had over the course of Team of the Season. Sancho definitely dropping down now. When it comes to these cams and centre mids, I just don't see him really putting up the numbers. We have Cruz, still absolutely brilliant. He's a lovely card. I feel like the upgrade for that version as an SBC was an absolute must, and he must have stayed in the team for definitely a few hundred matches. Gundogan, a nice card, but for me, I just didn't really rate it at all. Gundogan's not necessarily the player style for me. It doesn't really work. So then we have Akpom. I did like that card. I feel like in terms of the championship, it was between him and obviously Brownhill, both being 94 rated, still coming in at 270 with a 3-star, 5-star. I'm gonna go up here, and I think Amalda's gonna join him as well. I feel like with Amalda, he was kind of like a shining light in the MLS that was very, very dead. Honestly, it just never really worked for me. A 5-star, 4-star, great pace, shooting, passing, dribbling. Yeah, he's got the package. I feel like in terms of a cam, he will do the absolute job. And whilst we're on the points of cam, the one that I really do like, who I feel like is one of them ones that could offer the same sort of value, is going to be Mertens. For me, I do think he's coming in one less, judging from obviously the card, we've used him a handful of times now from obviously, was it Sunday to Tuesday. We've had him in a draft. We've managed to pack him on the second account. He's a nice card, but he's not really going to go in any sort of list where I would not want him over an Abidi Pele or obviously over a Cherokee or someone like that. We then do have a lot of ball-in centre mids, so we're going to run through a few now. We've got Bruno Guimaraes. I honestly was surprised he wasn't better. Personal experience, I really thought he would be better. Joe Linton genuinely performed with him, and that is a scary thing that you've got a 4 downgrade compared, plus an objective, which we know sometimes don't equal up to obviously what they say, but I must admit it was very hard to tell the difference between both of these two cards in terms of their playstyle. It just didn't really click for Bruno Guimaraes, unfortunately. Other though, Fofana, absolute rock. Loved this card from out of position all the way up. Did he get a Team of the Year nominee? Was it him? I want to say, I know there was, I think there's 2 Fofanas or 2 players from Lens. He did. Team of the Year honourable, obviously 88 rated, and yes, his out of position was an 86 centre-back that could be a CDM. He has been an absolute rock the whole way through. In terms of another centre-mid, I would say Palhinha obviously can play kind of more defensive if anything. I used him as a handful of times over Xabi Alonso. He worked really well, got the ball back, great physicality, manages to push up a little bit, and has the good amount of passing to go through. Not a problem whatsoever. Sissoko, I'm going to put him there as well. I feel like in terms of DMs, there's not too much difference between them. They both are played very much in that box-to-box styles where you're not necessarily shooting with them. I don't need that. Obviously, we've got other left mid, right mid strikers that can do all the shooting, but pushing the ball up, maybe having, for instance, I have Zidane next to him and can play that cam sort of role that can really fire in the shots, but I need somebody to A, defend, but also push to the halfway line, and I feel like both of them can do that no problem. Obviously, Verratti, very much like a Xavi, very much like a Pirlo, and obviously kind of like a Modric to some extent, very much on the pace, less physicality demand, bit of more defending, but mainly has that very quick agility as well as then the passing. Very, very nice card, but I can see him dropping very, very soon. Then also we have another CDM in Casemiro. I feel like in terms of this card, it's as good as you're going to get with him. In terms of the agility sort of thing, that is the kind of thing that really puts me off the card at times. He's got great physical presence, great defending, but unfortunately the dribbling, the actual turn and circle of him just isn't as good as what I'd like him. I'd like him to have that bit more. Maybe we see it in footies, maybe we don't. Maybe this is the top version of Casemiro we do see, but I do think he's definitely a good CDM, but I wouldn't say he's S material by any shout. Talisca is another one. I don't know if it's by name now, but I absolutely love this card every year in Team of the Season. Obviously does have the great links to any of the El Warans. If you're still rocking an El Jabba fantasy foot, then obviously it's going to be a great partnership there. And also, we can't forget a Team of the Season Moments CR7, who's going to play a great role with him, and also Romarinho, who again is starting to make his name in the Saudi from mainly Team of the Seasons in FIFA. We also have Xavi Simons, another great cam. Again, I feel like in terms of actually linking him, these two are going to be working absolutely fine. There's plenty of Dutch players, there's plenty of Brazil players, and I would say France is probably the next one after that. Neymar, obviously, for Brazil is going to be a big shout. Virgil van Dijk in, obviously, the Dutch. Hullet, if you wanted to go icons, alongside Van der Sar. And also, you've got your man, Frimpong, who, again, is absolutely outstanding. Pogba is a shame, because I do think Pogba definitely deserves more in terms of an outer performance-based card. Unfortunately, he is injured again, which does settle the debate. Well, it doesn't settle the debate. It adds to the debate of, will we see a Pogba again? Will we see this 90-plus not flashback? I'm hoping we do get a footage with him, as I do think he's very much like the Yaya, the Vieira, the Hullet. He's got a big presence in the midfield. When you get that 95, 96 Pogba, he is unplayable. He's got the skills, the agility, the physicality. He normally has a presence in the defence, but also then a wicked long shot / shot power going forward. Whether we see that again is going to be very, very much up for debate. We then have a few more cards left. One that I was heavily disappointed in. I really didn't like Fekir. It may be just my opinion, and some people might really get on with him. I just really didn't. I didn't get to the standard of what I remember Fekir for, and it's only been a couple of years. It's not as if he's been 5 to 10 years of Fekir being this absolutely monstrous cam. It's been the past 2 years where I think he really kind of shone in a lot of teams, a very nice left-footed cam. This year I just was a little bit let down. I don't know if the standard of players is so much higher, or he just isn't quite the player of upgraded of what we kind of remember. Havertz is another one. I do think I'd probably be very, very harsh putting him in A, but I definitely thought this card could have been way, way better in terms of actual ability in-game. For me, it just never worked. It never clicked. I do think there is probably players out there that could get the absolute most out of him. I just never could get on with him. I would much rather take a Werner over a Havertz personally. We then have a Brandt. I feel like a standard centre mid more than anything. Obviously, he's always been in that German Royce shadow at Dortmund in terms of FIFA especially. I feel like a lot of people would always prefer a Cam Royce than a Brandt CM. It's just unfortunate what it is. We then have the Dutch centre mid, fodder if anything. We then have, is it Marino? I want to say I pronounce his name. Obviously it is a little bit lower, a little bit zoomed out. Just so, yeah, Marino, 71 rater, 71,000, 3-star, 5-star. In terms of a card, you can't argue. For 71,000, if you're brand new to the game, maybe you've joined halfway through Team of the Season, you don't necessarily have the millions for the S category, and you don't necessarily have 500,000 to spend, he'd do a job. Good pace, 87's not terrible, 92 dribbling, 93 passing, 92 defending, as well as 93 physical. That's not bad in games. We've got decent composure. The defending physical is always a nice little work there. Great short and long. There's no way that I could put him anywhere other than A+. For that cost, as well as what he can bring to the field, we've used him a handful of times, obviously in La Liga Cup, and I think I snubbed him straight away in the La Liga tier list. Honestly, I was wrong, and sometimes you've got to be. Reina, bottom, absolutely hate this card. I just cannot work with it. It doesn't work. I liked his Adidas last year for a week. He just doesn't work in this game for me. Odegaard, very similar. Again, I feel like I've made my voice clear with what I think what they did to these Arsenal cards. I get that they're not necessarily trying to boost everybody up to 95, 96s, but Odegaard definitely deserved better than 92. Even Saka, I just think they absolutely destroyed that card. They could have made him. If Bernardo Silva's a 95 in the community, there's no way Odegaard should be anything less than 94. It just is what it is, unfortunately. Rice, very similar. Now we've got all these CDMs. It was a nice start in community at 89. Now we can go get a 50k card that is better, unfortunately. And then finally, Taurum. Again, another cracking centre mid, obviously coming in at the 89 value with obviously the community, and I do think he holds a little bit more weight. Obviously being Ligue 1, it is going to have a bit more weight going forward with some of the links that he can have, but I do think a very balanced sort of card that really works. The only thing that I do think this card needs the upgrade, if he was to go that one step further, a 4-star, 4-star, a 5-5 would genuinely go to an S category if he was like 94 rated with this. And that is going to be the tier list. So let me see down below what we've got here. I feel like that's probably the best. In fact, we'll go a zoom in and then we'll also look at the top, the bottom. So that's the S category for you. I feel like that's the premium of the premium. We then have the A pluses. Again, some absolutely wonderful cards. We then have the A's and finally the B's and C's. Let me know down below what you think. Make sure you do like and subscribe on this. And I'll catch you all for the next time. Peaces.